Darrell, this is so great to have you here. We're in Las Vegas. This is exciting that you're out with Cher. You're playing great. You have consistently played great. Where did this all begin for you?
On my dad's lap. As the story was told to me, I was 3 years old and my dad was a music lover. And I would go in the basement in our home and I would listen to all of Beethoven's symphonies because that was my dad's favorite composer. So I'm sitting there and my dad noticed that not only was I listening, but I was humming the melodies at age 3. That's what they say. I don't remember. I don't have any memory of that. And my dad just sort of said, you know what, we're going to get you some piano lessons. So I started taking piano at 5, and I just fell in love with music. Fell in love with all types of music, and it just carried on and on and on.
So you're taking piano lessons, and you're listening to mostly classical music at that time?
Yeah, and I'm actually just playing classical music too as well.
And you were studying with private teachers?
Yep.
So you had some information. So when did that kind of step into more of the popular type of music?
Again, my dad, because he had a whole bunch of jazz records. Jonah Jones, Clifford Brown, Miles Davis, Sketches of Spain, which was a huge impact on me.
Yeah.
Come on. He had a lot of choral music. He had a whole bunch of music. So I started listening to jazz, and that's when I started really getting into jazz, especially like Oscar Peterson and Keith Jarrett, Herbie Hancock. But my favorite was Ahmad Jamal.
Oh, what a great rhythmical player.
Yeah. He wasn't busy. It was slow enough for me to pick up what he was throwing down. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
Poinciana, what's some great stuff that he played, right? I mean, really phenomenal in what it was. So your dad wasn't really a musician, he was just a music lover.
He was a music lover.
Oh, interesting.
And he had these huge Bozak speakers and really pimped out turntable. And as 3, I'm just thinking everything was huge, everything was big, and the music was coming at me so loud, and it was like, yeah, this is really where I want to be right now, in the basement with my dad listening to music.
Boy, this is powerful because the names that you've mentioned, like all these phenomenal keyboard players, Oscar Peterson, this is really what the next generation needs to hear. Names like this that they can go and research who these people were and check out their recordings and listen to their style of playing. Mm-hmm. Oscar Peterson was a very different player than Ahmad Jamal, on both sides of the end. So hearing that variety of how you started to listen to at a young age. So what happened now as far as becoming a professional? Where did that come into? All of a sudden you started to work. Well,
I was doing a lot of local jazz hits around town. I grew up in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and that was a haven for jazz music, especially combo jazz stuff, So I just kept playing around town, and after high school, I went to college, and that's where it really all changed for me, because that's all I was doing. I was just doing music. I was in the practice room for hours upon hours, and I was doing some paid gigs around town, and the University of Wisconsin Oshkosh is where I went to school. And that's when I started thinking, maybe I could make a living out of doing this. and then that just sort of snowballed. I kept getting more and more gigs.
So it kind of naturally happened, guys started calling you and you started playing. What kind of gigs were you playing at the time?
Just jazz gigs, some pop stuff, but mostly jazz.
Really?
Just jazz, primarily. And that's how I was actually paying for a lot of things in college, too.
How amazing. It's interesting how many musicians that I interview here that talk about the importance of jazz. Mm-hmm. Even though right now they might not be playing a lot of jazz, but the importance of listening to it and having it close to your heart is a very important spark that, I'm sure jazz opened you up for playing pop and opened the vision of how you see music now.
Yeah, absolutely. Because the feeling that I got from playing and listening to jazz was just freedom, the improvisation. And you go through this self-discovery. And sometimes when I was playing it, I felt like I was having out-of-body experiences. You know what I mean? Yeah. I was becoming familiar with my voice as a musician. And I think that's really important. This self-discovery is really what's really important. And jazz gives you that.
Yeah.
Because you're forced to do the discovery on your own, because nothing's written. You're just making this stuff up on your own. And I also found out that whatever was happening around my life would influence how I would play. If it was a book that I read, or if it was other music that I heard, or a piece of art in a museum, or something that someone said in a lecture in college, it started to spill over into my musical experiences.
Interesting. So you've allowed yourself to stay open-minded to everything.
Yeah.
to allow that to influence your musical art, even though it could have been coming from someplace else.
Yeah.
That's a really important task for people to learn,
Yeah.
to put into action. So where'd you go now? So now, with the list of people that you have performed with, it's absolutely mind-boggling. How'd that start, where you started getting more involved in an active professional career?
Yeah, I moved to LA in 1983. I went to USC graduate school program. I was studying composition. I wanted to write for film and television. That was really my passion.
Yeah.
And I kept getting gigs, so the passion kept being pushed aside. And I quit a couple of times. I came back, and I was a TA 1 year, and then I'd have to quit because I had to go out on the road. My first gig was with Cleo Lane and John Dankworth.
What beautiful!
I was awful.
Yeah.
I was terrible.
Really?
I was nervous. I couldn't. I mean,
was that in the U.S.? Because they're from the UK.
This was in the U.S.
Interesting. Wow.
It was one gig, and they never called me back. I was terrible, man. I was bad, but I learned from that.
Absolutely.
I learned from that failure.
Absolutely. So, interesting point. Failure. There's something that's very, very important about failure. That is a stepping stone to success. Mm-hmm. So, in this first occasion, you played with them, didn't work out. Where did the courage come to continue? That's got to be a hard thing to deal with.
Visualization was a big thing for me back then, and still is today. And I just visualized myself being successful as a musician and making a living out of it. I wouldn't let the negative thoughts control my life.
Right.
So, and that was in '87, where I was a complete failure. And then in '88 was where it really all changed, and I got the Anita Baker, the first tour I went out with. Beautiful. Anita Baker, yeah. Beautiful. And I got it through an audition with George Duke. Met George Duke, was a huge impact on my life.
George, what a phenomenal
just, he was just like, just be you, just do you.
Yeah.
And those thoughts, his voice still ring.
Now, Anita was huge, and
yeah.
still is. It's just that the power of her voice and what she did. So what was it like? So going from that point of you having maybe some doubt about yourself to this all of a sudden this turnaround. What do you think made that turnaround? Was it something that you did in particularly?
I think it was my friends that were musicians, because we would share stories and how they, we had similar failure stories, and I was also playing out a lot the year after the failure. So I felt, you know what, I just need to go back in and play with a bunch of different cats and just build up, my muscles for whatever comes my way. I think it was partly the experience, the big stage with Cleo and John, and seeing an audience of people that I've never seen before that is huge. I think that was the problem. So I just sort of pushed myself into putting myself in really difficult situations musically. I always made sure that things were within my grasp, but I was also stretching for other things. So I was challenging myself, and with that challenge came that opportunity through another person that I was playing with to audition for Anita, because he saw that, I was developing as a musician and I was becoming more and more confident. And he said, yeah, I think you're ready.
How powerful.
How powerful.
So it wasn't necessarily the music that you were afraid of, it was just the drama of the entire scene.
Yeah.
Of hitting that stage.
Yeah.
And some of the fears that come with it, absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's interesting, Mark Schulman, who I know you know from drumming with Cher, has written a great book about that, about just that fear of how to attack that fear and face that fear. Beautiful stuff. So here now you're playing Anita, you're working. How long were you with Anita?
Until '96. So we did 3 tours together. Nice. I was just the piano player the first tour, and the last 2 I was the music director.
Beautiful.
So I sort of graduated, But Anita, that was one of the most important career highlights for me, because she saw something in me that made me feel like this is something that I could do. I think that there was a work ethic, and she saw that I had this ability to play for singers when it's just piano and vocal.
Nice.
So I could accompany them, and I could sort of feel where they were going, and they could feel where I was going. So there was this relationship that we were having, this connection. And that's been the highlight. That has been what's carried me through most of my professional career, because I've always been in that position on every tour.
But that means you have the quality of that is compassion, to feel what other people feel. And when you're playing piano behind an artist as great as Anita is, you got to really be sensitive to every place she's going and what's happening. That's the way you learn that, by doing it.
Yeah, and it taught me a discipline that you can't take a note off.
Yeah.
You're in it. I mean, you've got to be in it until the last note.
Yeah, yeah.
And Anita taught me that. Doing that tour taught me a whole lot of things about musical integrity, staying in character, staying focused,
absolutely,
staying disciplined. You know, it really became a really important factor to my musical career.
So talk about your work ethic. I mean, this work ethic of that seems to be a very important part that you really feel is a major part of how we can succeed.
Yeah, I take it very seriously. I want to be the first one there, and I want to be the last one to leave.
Good for you.
It's almost like an athletic training thing for me.
Yeah.
I'm building up my muscles. I'm building up the right muscles for this particular gig.
Yeah.
And the harder I work, the easier it's going to get for me once I'm out on the road.
Yeah.
And so I've always been that way. And showing up on time, putting in the extra effort, getting to know the crew, getting to know management, which is really important to me because, you know, the crew works the hardest.
Yeah, they put some serious.
Yeah, they put some serious.
Backstage
and if they
time.
see you working just as hard, there's a mutual respect there.
Yeah.
Because they're actually our lifeline.
So how do you maintain, you're on the road traveling, how do you maintain your chops, your technique, your frame of mind? How do you keep this all at a high level?
I'm bad at that. I have to admit, I'm going to be honest. I don't really practice that much once I'm out on the road. I guess the practice I get is from playing the gig.
Absolutely.
I spent so much time in the practice room, 8 hours a day when I was in college.
Yeah.
I had no life. I was isolating myself because I knew how important it was to get this foundation and something that is going to carry me on throughout the years. And I really do need to start practicing more because I get a certain joy out of it, you know. And I get a joy out of playing, but being isolated and, again, the self-discovery, it's really important.
But that self-discovery is important at many levels because that's what's going to give you more inspiration to want to continue.
Yeah.
Where do you think your passion comes from? You're very passionate about what you're doing. What fuels that for you?
Well, my parents and my brother.
Interesting.
I'm going to try to not get too emotional.
Yeah.
My oldest brother had Down syndrome. And I remember practicing on this cheap spinet and it sounded terrible, it was out of tune. But I knew my first audience was my brother, and he would sit there. And, you know, he would just sit there so peacefully listening to me fumble through Chopin.
Yeah.
And I said, well, if he was willing to sit and listen to how poorly I'm playing, he sort of created this energy, this dynamo in me to persevere. And that's when I just discovered the passion for music.
And his boy, that's very powerful because his listening to that music brought a peace of mind to him that must have been very powerful to overcome any challenge he might have been experiencing.
Yeah, and that's where the passion began.
Interesting.
I can have this effect on another human being. That's powerful.
And your parents, I mean, having strong parents that supported what you did was extremely important. So, I mean, you had so many great qualities that had set you up for your success. This is important, but you put the hard work in. You put the practicing in. You listened to the recordings. Did you start listening to popular recordings? Did that come into place where all of a sudden you started hearing pop music? Did you?
You know, when I finally got to work age, I bought a record a week. The first record I bought was The Talking Book by Stevie Wonder. Yeah. I wore that out. Spyro Gyra. For some reason, I had this really affinity for smooth jazz back then. Michael Franks, the Brecker Brothers.
Yeah.
Steps Ahead. Record a week. Steps Ahead. Yeah. And I would listen to that music over and over and over again, and I would transcribe solos.
But if you think about that, that's 52 full recordings of albums that you're hearing a year. The amount of music that you're putting into yourself, that's kind of like self-inspiration. I mean, you were fueling yourself to keep going. Incredible. So now you started touring, and when did touring come into play? Where all of a sudden you're hitting the road now?
1988, and it hasn't stopped.
And it hasn't stopped. So
No.
you're still on the road, you're doing it.
Yeah.
And what is it like now as you're traveling and you're working with several musicians, you know, and here you are in Vegas performing. What is it like being in front of the crowds now? How used are you now to being in front of these crowds? These are some serious crowds now.
Yeah, I am so used to it now.
Really?
I still get a little nervous if I'm in a situation where it's just me and the vocalist. But for the most part, I'm really comfortable on stage. It starts to get uncomfortable when it's just me and another singer. It's just piano and vocals. But still, I'm comfortable with that as well.
But that's because it's all on you at that time.
Yeah,
it's all on
me.
you, Darrell.
Yeah,
that's for sure.
Yeah, that's probably the only discomfort I have on stage.
You know, what we love about the sessions is that we allow these interviews to be listened, and of course we want them to be listened to all this next generation. And you're by far not old, so it's not a matter of that. It's more a matter of capturing your experiences so they can hear the success that you're having, so they can open up avenues of their success.
Right.
You know, in closing, what would you say to the next generation as they listen to words that you could have, that they can map out and plan and be inspired to follow a path that you might guide them along? What would you say to them?
Don't give up. Perseverance. Try to get as much music in your body, in your mind, in your soul. If you're not a reader of books, listen to books. Go to a museum. Surround yourself with creativeness. You know, just bombard yourself with it, because I guarantee it's going to affect your musical life experiences. That's what I would say to young musicians to inspire them.
What would you say also on the business side? How organized are you as a person?
See, I'm not very good on the business end.
Really?
I've gotten better. But I think the negotiating of salaries was always a difficult thing for me, because I didn't really understand. I couldn't equate value as a musician. I couldn't put dollars on what I can provide.
Yeah.
That happened over time. I started getting that skill set. With business, I think just be a genuinely nice person. Nice. And if you're confronted with someone that is not being nice to you, stand up for yourself, obviously. Yeah. Don't just take it, but also do some reading on it. Ask other musicians that you know that have been on the road and have been successful, and now with social media and the advent of the internet, which I didn't have that when I was coming up. So there's a lot of resources you can tap into to help you with your business acumen. You know.
But that's an important part of the process. So the balance of business and art, that's an important balance to try to find.
Yeah, that's a delicate balance.
Yeah.
Because you do want to get the job. You don't want to overprice yourself because there's always someone that can probably come under your price and take the gig. I think if you could somehow get an idea of what you bring to this particular project, and then sort of come up with an idea of how much it's going to cost, that's important. Getting that skill. It's a skill. I mean, it's not something you wake up in the morning and go, hey, some do.
Yeah.
But it's a skill, and it takes some experience.
That's kind of where the experiences come in. It sounds like you really have been through experience has been such a great teacher for you in the process. So aside from the fact that you've put this incredible amount of time into learning your instrument and being aware and absorbing as much music as you can, you have put yourself out there to learn.
Yeah.
And when you made a mistake, you said, great, brush yourself off, and you went out there again and learned.
Yeah, case in point, I was touring with Katie Lang at the All You Can Eat tour. I'll never forget it, because that's the first time I had to play accordion. I've never played accordion in my life. I didn't know how to play accordion. And it was such a wonderful experience, because all of a sudden I'm playing accordion for 30,000 people. And I wasn't very good, but I could get through it.
I'm sure it was great. I'm sure it was great.
I could get through it.
Well, I'm sure with the amount of music that you have inside of you, that no matter what instrument you grabbed, you would be able to understand it quickly, for sure.
Yeah. It was just the squeezing part that was hard. The keyboard part was fine.
That is powerful. It's amazing, Darrell. You really are an inspiration to many people. When you're performing on stage and people see you play, you give a light. You give a light when you speak. You give a light when you play. That really is magic. It's really great what you do. And
thank you so much.
To wish you the success of continuing doing it on behalf of the sessions as we have this next generation listen to the words and, of course, enter your music. This is a powerful message that you're sending out to everyone that hears you play?
Oh, thank you so much.
Thank you so much on behalf of the Sessions.
Thanks.
Great job.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Thank you.